In this update, we've got a lot of heat that's really going to start to build across the Central Plains heading into this weekend, but especially into next week. Into the north of that ridge, we are going to have to look out for strong thunderstorms. But out in the tropics, we are watching a fairly active tropical wave that's coming off the coast of Africa. And there are signs that we may have to watch this, especially headed into that first week of August. So if we expand the view, this afternoon, take a look at the satellite picture. We've been just inundated with a conveyor belt of moisture off a stalled frontal boundary that's been really draped across a good part of the deep south and much of the southeast. That's bringing some straining thunderstorms and some flooding rains. In fact, some of these areas along the coastal regions have picked up 6 to 10 inches of rain just in the last 3 days. And then further north, we'll have some heat-driven thunderstorms today as well as into tomorrow, but especially for those areas across the Dakotas into northern portions of Minnesota. But out of the tropics, you can see some active tropical waves, especially coming off the coast of Africa. There is going to be a little bit more potent one that's going to be trying to come into the Caribbean and eventually going to make it in towards the Bahamas, where some of the ensemble guidances are starting to hint of tropical storm development in the distant future and heading into that first week of August. So if we expand the view and take a look at some of these temperatures this afternoon, we are coming off some pretty pleasant light conditions even for the last 10 days across the central US. So for those areas that have been experiencing those pleasant light conditions, you still have another day or two, especially for those areas in well into the 80s, widespread 70s, all the way to the deep south. Very rare. In fact, Dallas is approaching 10th day in a row. This is going to be your 10th day in a row of below average temperatures. So that tells you how nice it's been for late July. But we've got August looming, and we are going to be seeing signs of that ridge of high pressure that's been pretty much predominantly locked over their western regions, and portions of the east are actually going to kind of merge together and really start to overcome a good part of the US, but especially highlighted across the central US with triple digit heat. So for today, we are looking at some convective availability along this stalled frontal boundary, where we do have some more showers and thunderstorms, likely not severe, but some of those could be like tropical type downpours. But yes, further to the north, where we do have a little bit more heat to work with, a little bit more instability, that's where we are concerned for some of these storms to be mainly wind producers. But I can't actually roll out an isolated tornado within this atmosphere, especially for those areas across northern portions of Minnesota. So don't let your guard down today, and a little bit higher risk, in fact, actually is elevated into tomorrow. But if you break it down over the next 48 hours, this is where the instability should lie, but especially along the coastal region. So yes, for those areas like Victoria, Galveston, I know Baytown had a lot of flooding rains this morning. You're still going to get some heavier thunderstorms, that tropical type downpours with that stalled frontal boundary that's just been sending those conveyor belt amount of moisture, and that's going to send into those areas of Louisiana, back into Arkansas, as well as into Mississippi, into Alabama, as well as into those areas into the Carolinas. We are going to have some monsoonal flow. So at times we could have some isolated severe activity for those areas across the four corners. And then of course you have that convective ability into the Dakotas, but especially that northern area of Minnesota. But yeah, that's where the heat really going to start to build. It's going to start this weekend, but really start to expand next week. That dominant ridge has been kind of locked over the west. We've had a lot of heat out east, but a little cooler across the central US. Now that's actually going to go away, and those two ridges are technically going to merge across the good part of the US, and much of the US is going to be well above average. Now we're heading into that hottest part of summer. So of course it's normally hot this time of year, but you still have a dominant ridge that's going to encompass a good part of the US, and we are going to be seeing numerous amounts of triple digit temperatures across the central US, and some of those could be in fact record breaking temperatures, because it's all complements of this expanding heat dome that's really starts to get activated, especially heading into next week. So by Tuesday, we're going to be seeing a dominant ridge of high pressure pretty much locked over a good part of Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas. they look to take the brunt of this heat wave, especially into Oklahoma, into Kansas. Some of those temperatures could approach the 110 range. Not out of the question for those areas into Kansas. But to the north of there, you are going to get some Ridge Rider type setups north of that overall jet stream. So if you live in areas of Nebraska, back into Iowa, especially those eastern areas of Nebraska, back into Iowa, you could get some heat-driven thunderstorms, some mesoscale convective complexes that form in the heat of the afternoon, that kind of conveyor belt across that northern periphery of that ridge. So definitely kind of be a lookout of that, because you are going to have a lot of instability to tap into by the time we head into Wednesday. So these are going to be heat-driven thunderstorms after we produce that daytime high. So as we head into the early evening time frame, expect storms to likely start to bubble up on the northern periphery of that ridge. And we have to be concerned about some of those. Could be definitely some stronger wind producers approaching that 70, if not almost 80 mile per hour range, especially as we head into Tuesday, into Wednesday. But man, it's going to be hot, folks. This is probably the hottest temperature so far of the summer. And of course, this is typically the hottest part of the summer. So this is what you expect in the hottest part of the summer is triple digit temperatures and some record breaking temperatures. But some of that is likely going to have some heat advisories and excessive heat warnings draped across a good part of the Central Plains. Like I mentioned, I think Oklahoma and Kansas more or less end the bullseye, portions of Nebraska, for this major heat wave that's going to be inundating a good part of the U.S. And we have in fact moderate to excessive high heat warnings going to be in place as we head into middle of next week. And as we do to end July, that heat dome just likely expands even further across the south and to the Central Plains. So that's where the heat is really going to be felt in a big way. Still going to be warm and hot out west and still fairly hot out east, but the brunt of it, the most intense heat, the most well above average heat, is going to be across a good part of the central U.S. And you can see some of those record-breaking temperatures forecasted from the National Weather Service, topping out about 109 there in Kansas, 108 in towards like the Amarillo region. So definitely some record-breaking temperatures likely to unfold as that heat dome just expands even further. At the same time, we'll be watching, kind of a tropical wave that is trying to get its act together off the coast of Africa. Obviously, it's been fairly slow after Beryl subsided, but we've gone through that little slow patch. Now, as we head into August, typically have that Saharan dust start to wind down. We're already kind of seeing some signs of that. So as we head into the month of August, we've got some of these active tropical waves. The wind shear starts to die down, and as it heads towards the Leeward Islands, conditions are going to be becoming a little bit more favorable. And that's exactly what the European ensemble guidances kind of hint at by the time we head into Friday. And of course, this is a long ways out. This is still a week out, even by the time it heads into the Leeward Islands. So we got plenty of time to track what is just this little tropical wave right now that came off the coast of Africa 2 days ago. Now it's going to be traversing across with that Bermuda high. That's what the difference is this year. The high wasn't as strong last year, and you had a lot of recurvatures and more or less put everything, closer to the eastern seaboard, but a lot of the hooked out to sea. With this dominant ridge of high pressure, kind of the more stronger Bermuda high, is going to allow these systems that come off the coast of Africa every 2 days or so to continue further west. And that's why we have such bullish outlook on the hurricane season, as you have a higher number of these tropical waves that come off the coast of Africa that are likely going to try to develop, especially as the dust starts to subside and especially as the wind shear becomes a little bit more favorable. And as these head towards the Caribbean, they are going to be trying to get its act together. But they are going to be facing a ridge of high pressure as it gets closer to the United States. So by the time we head into Friday, this would be next Friday, yes, you're going to be still locked over a good part of the west and central U.S. with that dominant ridge of high pressure, as we'll be watching that little tropical wave getting a little bit closer to the Dominican Republic, likely towards the Bahamas by then. And by then, if we extend the view all the way through the weekend through Monday timeframe, here's the overall ensemble. Still has that continuing moving west northwest. So we've got some members try to take it into the Gulf of Mexico. We've got other members try to take it into Florida, and we even have the same amount of members try to take it and swing it towards the southeast and up the Carolina coast. So we've got a long time to track this particular, what is just a tropical wave right now. But the GFS right now doesn't have anything, wants any part of it. So it's just really the overall global and European guidance, but the GFS that's not showing anything. But it's enough to warrant right now. The National Weather Service went ahead and highlighted a 20% probability of this thing trying to get its act together and trying to form into some sort of tropical type entity. And if it does, it would actually take the name Debbie. But again, this is a long ways out. This is where it would likely be 7 days from now. So we have plenty of time to track this. And right now, the global models are not even on the same page. So this could end up just being a little tropical wave that sends an abundance amount of moisture to Florida and up into the southeast. But nonetheless, we've got a lot of time to track this. But yes, heading into Friday, it's mainly going to be that dominant heat dome that's going to be really locked in over a good part of the U.S. And if we look at this hazardous temperature outlook as we head into that first week of August, yeah, a good part of the U.S., besides maybe the coastal regions of the West Coast, the interior regions are really going to be starting to feel the heat. But really the excessive heat really starts to lock in and expand over a good part of Kansas into Oklahoma. The northern side of Texas is going to take the brunt of it. But yes, those areas into Montana, the Dakotas, mainly, the Ohio Valley, all these areas are going to have moderate to excessive, even high excessive heat, issues as we head into next week. And just these areas along the coast. So that's why the Southeast is a little bit more favorable to take anything, because it's going to be feeling this ridge of high pressure that's going to be just locked over a good part of the central U.S. It would likely steer, if anything tries to develop, it would likely steer this likely into Florida or the southeast, or possibly even to the East Coast. It could be even just a rainmaker if it even doesn't form at all. So, but nonetheless, we've got plenty of time to watch this system, because right now, even the ensembles, the European ensembles only have about a 20% probability, and that's 9 to 10 days out, of trying to form along into the Bahamas region. So not very bullish at the moment, but it is something to keep an eye on, because we are expecting a very active hurricane season. So guys, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update while I protect you before and after the storm.